Hello there. Thank So for my presentation, I will be discussing how I put glass across the fourth wall to create live shows for the web. So I had to, as starting around March, I was at an NAIA tournament. I was helping with the basketball tournament, live streaming the events for the NAIA website, as well as for ESPN3 eventually. Well, a couple days into that, they decided to kind of cancel the event, and a lot of organizations, a lot of sports organizations, a lot of different production companies, concerts were kind of canceling as it was going on. So I was kind of like experiencing like the feeling of the unknown of what was going to happen. And eventually we had to, after just a couple days, we had to pack up all of our equipment that we had to set up, which took us forever to do across this giant arena, the Tyson Event Center. And we had to just lug it back to the college. And then we were told that we had to leave campus the next day to go back home. So that was one of the big problems immediately fixed. And it was kind of the unknown due to, I don't like saying the name anymore just because I've heard it so much. So I'm just going to call it the gingivitis pandemic. So some of the problems that faced the course was due to the pandemic. Ending up, being back at home, having to do online classes, using Zoom, Google Meet, all those various applications, in order for just, communication with other people, as well as my education and even a lot of yours education to continue on. And that was one of the big things that was faced right away. Another thing, which was probably even more unexpected, was the digital design department being cut around a couple months after, around like April or May-ish, where some of the professors kind of left. And those professors were kind of the key components of me being into video production and digital design. And because of that, they had to leave. And of course, because of that, the budget was cut, not just for just digital design, but also broadcasting as well. And with that, because there's a cut program, that means there's a lack of students to help out in broadcasting and camera work. And because of that, I was wondering, where am I going to find people to help in productions, especially with thesis projects? And that was a great concern for me, especially even just going into the beginning of the school year as we came back in person. And another thing that kind of came up was, well, the theater department can have in-person shows. We're not able, they're not able to kind of, facilitate people coming in, gathering into the Scott Theater and being able to have these productions, which is kind of the cornerstone of the department, is to have said productions and be able to kind of, make that happen for students to be able to help with their major. And I guess that's kind of where I came in. With the digital design students, we were kind of brought in, combining with art majors, theater. We're kind of pushed in a little, to the left, to the right, kind of in various places, kind of just working together because, everyone's has, things that we've had to kind of get used to and new things to learn. So I decided to kind of help out with this since I kind of had, I've had experience to begin with, and since I was in theater, back in high school for a little bit, I had a little bit more experience, which helped me out kind of in the productions, which I will be discussing later on. And one of the big things, of course, was what am I going to do with students who don't exactly, not only do we not have the professors, but we also don't have the students who have the experience. Well, because of that, I ended up becoming sort of the professor to various students that decided to kind of come in, volunteer their time, and pretty much just kind of learn how a lot of this broadcasting video equipment stuff worked. So I had to become the professor myself, and I was teaching them along the way. I was kind of, some students I gave kind of like mini free sessions to kind of learn various different things. And so I kind of had to be the one to take the helm because who knows what was going to be happening in the future with the college itself. So I had to teach how to kind of set up equipment, work a camera, and also direct them on what to film and how to film it. Of course, how to wrap cables, because you don't want to literally destroy very expensive equipment when you don't quite have a budget. Just the basics of camera shots, being able to have close-ups, medium wides, and being able to kind of sort of understand that. Properly tearing down all of the equipment, the various different questions on what's an SDI cable, what is iris up, how does this work, what does this button do? A lot of questions popping up that I kind of had to answer and to teach. And then of course being able to teach them how to properly dolly, properly pan, properly tilt, properly zoom. For me, it was pretty much the past, 7 years of learning video production. It was like a review for me almost, being able to kind of bring along the lessons I learned, not just from Hastings College, not even just from Fremont High School, also from the Savannah College of Art and Design, which I took for my freshman year. And so I kind of just had to bring in the knowledge that I already had, and I even had to learn many other new things in the span of this school year. And so with that, because I was teaching them, I was this would allow me to be able to have people using the camera equipment, since I can't be the one, controlling 3 to 4 different cameras. I needed people to help me out, as I was the one kind of directing everything, and then even cutting it live, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And so basically at the beginning of the year, it started more around October. We started, theater department decided to develop what's called the Sunday show. The first one was around 50 minutes, and then the second one was a 30-minute kind of various skit shows, sort of like SNL a little bit, though with more theater-related kinds of improv, as well as some of the students having to develop their own short films themselves from little to no experience. And so with that, trying to develop a Sunday show, I collaborated with the department, collaborated with Sam Cordes, collaborated with Luke Lifgren over there to kind of bring this all to life, so that way the theater students would be able to have some opportunities to be able to do some theater kinds of productions, even if it is, there's no real audience that they can see, so it's a much different perspective for them. I know for a fact the past, I don't know, ever since I've been around theater, I'm always hearing, theater is better because, you have the crowd, there's that kind of, nervous feeling you get being able to be in the production. It's always very different. And, having to just film the Sunday show, you don't get that kind of experience. But it was something that we had to do in order to, continue on with the department. And so these are just some pictures of kind of the Sunday show at the Gray Center using the Studio A green screen, and one of the only big green screens between Chicago and Houston, I believe. I can't exactly remember which exact cities. I know it's Chicago. I think it's also Houston that, we have the kind of green screen studio that isn't really used all that often. As the kind of department kind of whittled away a little bit, people kept adding on to it, and of course we kind of, it was there for the taping. So for the first show, we had in mind that we would use the green screen, and then what we would do, we would replace the black background for the chroma key to kind of key it out, so that way we would have a completely different background as if they were in a whole different location. And I'll talk about why in our first Sunday show, that didn't work out as planned, and all we had was just the green screen in the background. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to kind of show how all of the various equipment was kind of set up in order to make this happen. So you can see here, this is actually sort of the same exact setup that we use for Collegiate TV, which is the Collegiate newspaper's kind of YouTube channel where we do sort of newscasts between 5 to 15 minutes and do various stories and kind of collaborate with the Collegiate newspapers. And this is this exact setup we use, except we kind of replaced the cameras, and the cameras are from 2007, and they're very ancient, and they don't give out as great a video quality. So when we were doing the Sunday show, we of course replaced them with a lot smaller cameras. It's really hard to kind of see, but it's kind of poking out of the teleprompter, which allowed for some of the hosts to be able to kind of read what they read off kind of the script and kind of be able to organize their thoughts. And so that's what these kind of screens right here for. They're teleprompters, and they're mirrored through a computer screen, which is the computer screen itself is inverted on the image, and then allows them to kind of see a pretty decent picture of the script while also looking at the camera. And of course, we've got some RE lights. You can kind of see with this setup here that it's using 3-point lighting. And that kind of allows to help us get a very balanced lighting for our host. So that way there's no really big shadows on their face. They're not too dark, nor are they going to be too bright because of the way it's kind of set up. And also the green screen is not particularly balanced lit. It was never really fully finished to have this very balanced lighting. So we kind of had to compensate with these RE lights, so that way we can be able to, have fairly decent lighting. And on the right here, it's very different kinds of lights. These are Fresnel lights. And then to the right here, they're LED lights. And these were also used since they were the only other lighting set that we had, so that way we can have this extra setup over here along with the kind of newsroom set, so that way we didn't have to, move everything around between short films that we were presenting. Of course, we had a boom mic, which was kind of made so that way we make sure you have quality audio, because the mics on the actual cameras themselves, the internal mics, are very bad. It sounds like there's so much like white noise, it's like you're in a hurricane. So we kind of facilitated that and used the boom mic to kind of make sure we had cleaner audio. This is the PS5. I mean, this is the Sling Studio box. And what that is basically kind of the main box that allows for us to use the cameras wirelessly, so that way we can transmit the signal using these camera links, which are connected to mini HDMI, and then that camera link sends a wireless signal to that box, which is then facilitated through the iPad here, which allows me to basically control the different camera angles and be able to control all of our different angles, add graphics, adjust the audio mix right through the iPad. So I'll talk about it later, but it'll pretty much allows us through that iPad, we are then able to send a live signal over to Facebook, which then allows for people to be able to watch the Sunday show. And we were showed that through the Hastings College Theater Facebook page. As you can see here, this is from the second Sunday show, which was not fully live, but instead was pre-recorded. But we still used the Sling Studio to be able to send that signal over to Facebook Live. And we were, as I was talking about the first Sunday show, originally we were gonna kind of chroma key it live. The problem is though with the Sling, while it does have a chroma key feature, it didn't allow me to it didn't allow a lot of control, which made the image look pretty bad. You can see here, using Premiere Pro, I was able to get it just right, so that way we were able to remove the background, remove some of the shadows right over on the edges here, and be able to kind of perfect that so that way the image looks as good as it possibly can. You can see there's a lot of different options which I had to adjust in order to make that happen for each shot. And that's because I was able to have that kind of control. I was able to kind of adjust the lighting and even adjust the color correction on them. So that way I was able to make it as good as it can be. And that's kind of why control is being able to have that control is very important, and why a lot of times I don't like using an iPhone to, film my stuff. So I want to show kind of a quick minute clip of the second Sunday show, kind of just like various little short things of kind of what the Sunday show is like. Since it's like 30 minutes long, I kind of cut it down just to like a little minute snippet.
Welcome to the Sunday Show. My name is Kelly Berkacek.
And I'm Tyler Huntsman.
What? I'm running out of time.
Hey man, did you get that video for the Sunday show done?
Where are the babies?
They're in the break room sleeping.
You're fired.
Okay.
You're fired! Darcy!
Hey Charlie, you came!
I found the time!
You are not worth more words from mine mouth. Otherwise, I would call you knave.
Lock the plank! You're a flat tire. What are you? Chicken?
What a time to be alive. Thank you for tuning in to the Sunday Show.
And one of the segments was insults spanning across time. So that was one of the skits there. This was like a short film that I kind of helped develop with Taylor Bartos and Audrey Weeks. But this was kind of like one of the films that I kind of made, and you can see it on my. It is available on my YouTube channel and my website. So now we're getting to the actual the big theater productions which I had to help bring on live. Now what was different about this was instead of having it post on Facebook Live, we had to kind of send it in through Zoom. So that way they would get a code and a password as well as a link, so that way they could be able to watch the stream, and also to kind of help facilitate kind of be able to satisfy licensing, especially with the importance of being earnest, which had some restricted licensing, which is why I'm not able to kind of show clips of that show. And that one is, of course, directed by Luke Lifgren. And then the other one, which is directed by Liz Lee, that one was pre-recorded while Ernest was fully live and was a full 90-minute 3-act show. Liz's show, You Do Love Me, Don't You, was a 30-minute pre-recorded show that I had to edit together. And both of them kind of had very sort of different experiences. And I was able to get a few friends to kind of help me out and be able to film due to kind of the experience they had, both, maybe one helping me with broadcasting and also helping, with the NEI tournament. I was able to kind of be able to have people help me out, which was such a great relief. One of the things that I kind of had to encounter was that I needed to be able to provide a schedule for my film crew so that way they would be able to be organized and be able to come to practices, rehearsals, and be able to come to the show properly. So I pretty much combined the two shows together since we had to record both and be able to have that scheduled so that way they would be able to go to rehearsals on time. And with a lot of productions, there's a lot of planning that goes ahead so that way you can be able to make it successful. For me, there's a lot of stuff where, it was a lot, like we only had a few days to put it together, but for this one, it was something that was in mind for, of course, throughout this whole entire month. And then, of course, even I knew about it months ahead of time. So I had to kind of plan a schedule together. And I also, as I was we were doing rehearsals, I would give shot notes to the camera crew. So that way I would be able to kind of tell them what shots I want, because we weren't exactly able to communicate with headsets like we do at NEI tournaments, because we were supposed to be in a theater, we were supposed to be fully quiet, and we also don't have the kind of wiring that allows us to kind of be able to communicate with each other. So I would have to end up giving them notes to kind of be able to work that out. And something I especially noticed with Zoom streaming is that one of the most important things in having a high quality video, and why I also like to use various equipment, is because of resolution and bitrate. Now, of course, you can kind of see as the resolution drops from a 1080 HD image to 720, the image gets more pixelated and pixelated because there's not a whole lot of information in the image. But if let's say you have a 1080p video, and the megabytes per second, which is just the file size, is very small, you're going to get the same result of pixelated as you would with like a 360p image. And so as you have less information for it to kind of use and be able to work with, the lower the quality is going to be. And that's why, for me, resolution is very important. But what I realized with Zoom is that for certain accounts, they only allow for the footage. If you have a business, I believe if you have a business enterprise, you get 720p. If you're using the web browser version instead of the Windows installed program version, you can get 1080, but only if you have the highest premium package. And then of course, what we had was I was only able to really get a 360p image. So some of the live productions were of lower quality because of Zoom's limitations. I hope that, next year, this is definitely just kind of a learning lesson overall that we would be able to use. We would have a private link to YouTube to kind of stream it, and then we would be able to just send them that YouTube link, and then they would be able to have that 1080p quality because YouTube is able to facilitate that. We weren't able to kind of switch to Zoom, and one of the reasons is, of course, especially with the importance of being earnest, is that we had licensing having kind of a contract that we were only limited to kind of showing it on Zoom and not allowed to kind of show it, in any other way. And that was kind of just something we weren't able to fully plan out, and it's kind of the things that that come up. Sometimes with productions, actually all the time with productions, it's never going to be perfect. You may have an exact vision of what you want, but a lot of times there's always going to be compromises that you have to make in order to make it happen. Especially when you're having more lower budget, different productions, then of course you have more and more limitations. So with that, that's kind of what we kind of had to deal with. But hopefully, it's a learning experience for me and, for overall for the department at least. Because I know they were talking about me about how difficult it was for them to even just get the audio and video synced on Zoom. And that was something that I kind of had to kind of fix throughout the way myself and kind of learn. You can kind of see we had 3 different cameras, 1 in the middle and then 2 on the left and right. We were limited to those 3 cameras because Sling is limited to these specific cameras only. One of the big reasons is because it has a mini HDMI port. Now there's a regular HDMI port, which is what you normally have for like all your devices nowadays. But they decided to use basically just like less than an inch smaller version of an HDMI to be able to get an image. When looking at the back of it, it could have easily fit a full HDMI connection. So we kind of realized that, including in the back of the Sling box, in order to kind of send the output to Zoom, that we needed to buy a cable. So we had to buy a cable a few hours before before our first kind of run through live to make that happen. We kind of kept going along learning about stuff, but luckily Eric Nielsen helped me out, kind of figure out how we were able to send the signal through Zoom, because you can't exactly send it straight through the iPad. Unlike, with YouTube and Facebook, you're able to do that straight through the iPad. But because it was Zoom, we had to do a much more complicated way. And we pretty much had to connect it through the Sling box to a capture card, which was then connected to a computer, which then sends the signal from the iPad wirelessly from the Sling box to the computer. And then in order for us to be able to balance all the lavalier mics for each of the actors, we had to have a soundboard, which was also connected all the way from the left side of the theater all the way back into the main booth. It was basically just like a mishmash of cables that allowed us to send a connection to the video as if it were like a web camera feed almost. And this was kind of the setup that I have, being able to use a monitor as well, so that I can see a bigger image of the show. And of course I controlled all the different camera angles and the graphics through the iPad, and of course using a software called OBS to be able to send that signal through Zoom. So it was a very kind of complicated mishmash of cables and connections that I had to make. And that's how we were able to kind of put together the importance of being earnest. This is some screenshots. Of course, I'm not able to show a clip of it because, again, because of licensing, but it was a really, really fun show, great experience. 90 minutes long, but it didn't really feel all that long. It felt like half of that. So it was a really great show to be a part of. And now talking about Liz's show, which was only 30 minutes long and was pre-recorded. We filmed everything through the Sling studio, but I also saved the footage right on the cameras, so that way I would have the best quality possible. And I also used the Sling kind of program recording So that way I would be able to sync up all of the footage properly and be able to sync all the audio. So that way I can easily edit it in a very short amount of time. So all of these various clips I've had to kind of properly dub so that way every clip matched exactly with what was going on. So you see all these different layers and stuff on the timeline here, and of course all the audio clips which I had to balance out. And these are of course from 2 different shows. This is from our first run through, and then the second one is of course from our final day run through. And this is kind of the final product of that. You see all of these various different cuts, a lot of adjusting, a lot of sound effects, because we kind of try to make it into a comedy sitcom horror, and that was kind of the main aspect of the show. So we all thought to add like a layer of laugh tracks of a bunch of different music, and you can see all these lines here are just like different, going from one shot to the other, back and forth continuously. And I kind of combined both days of the show that we filmed, so that way I would be able to have the best show that we wanted to kind of make. You can see this first 15 minutes, that's the intro card. That's played 15 minutes before 7 p.m. when the show starts, so that way people can come into the Zoom presentation and be able to log in without much issue. They can log in ahead of time. And then of course, this all plays out like about 25 minutes, and then after that, there's just 5 minutes of the outro card, so that way they can just log off properly. If you want to look at a lot of my other various things, you can go to my website at sagereiger.com or my YouTube channel, which is also my name. But overall, it was a very interesting experience for me to kind of put this together. I didn't expect, at least my freshman year going into college, I didn't expect myself ever to be kind of going into this direction. But it was very much a learning experience, and even though there was a lot of challenges to kind of face, I was able to learn a lot from it and be able to do a lot more than I actually would have being at SCAD, as there was a lot more leadership put on me. And it was quite an interesting experience, but I was happy to facilitate that and doing my best to put the glass across the 4th wall.